we understand, Ms. Elmas, at this moment on Monday, according to agreements, that Turkey is going to return some of those economic migrants back to, in fact, their original countries. That's an agreement between Turkey and the European countries. Is Turkey, though, having agreed with it, capable of doing it?
Actually, Turkey has accepted to admit those who are not asylum seekers, I mean, who enter illegally to Greece and to European borders. So also this is an international obligation as well for all the countries to readmit people who cross other countries or over your countries. So Turkey has already accepted this issue, and Turkey has already said yes to readmit more than 300 migrants from Greece. So it is now the issue to be handled and to be waiting for implementation.
But on the other hand, Ms. Balfour, is that going to be the solution? I mean, Turkey as a country, the capability of absorbing all of these economic migrants could be limited, particularly when you look at the long term. Is that really going to be the solution?
No, that is not the solution. Also, the numbers speak for themselves. According to the UN, 90%, in fact, even slightly more than 90%, are actually people who have a right to apply for asylum. They are people who are fleeing from dangerous circumstances. So actually, the economic migrants piece is really a minority. So it's not going to solve, so putting all the eggs in the Turkish basket is not going to solve Europe's problem.
Is it going to efficiently, Ms. Balfour, on the other hand, postpone the further conflict among European countries and even among the EU countries in terms of how to seek a solution?
Yes, I mean, this is essentially the tactical game at play today. European states need to find some breathing space to build a consensus, because there are a number of things that need to be done in the short and longer term. The first priority of the Commission is to set out a roadmap to reinstate Schengen rules, i.e. to stop the disorderly lifting of internal barriers, which is what has been happening recently in Europe, to stem the influx of refugees. So this is one part of the picture, and that is that there's a clear priority on part of the member states to look internally, to look at the internal political situation in Europe, to build some consensus, to find some solutions. So this is really what's behind, because it is unrealistic to expect to announce the closure of that route and expect people fleeing from war to actually say, oh, okay, we'll go some other way into Europe. This is not how things work. So it really does, looking at it from the point of view of the flow of people, this is really not a solution. But all it indicates is that European states need this time to sit down and think about how to address this in the longer term.
But is it really fair for Turkey to shoulder all of these responsibilities?
It seems difficult for Turkey to take this crisis on its own shoulders, actually. This has to be a mutual partnership. This is the problem, actually. Okay, these summits are themselves actually important because providing chance for effective and mutual dialogue between the parties. Actually, this kind of dialogue should have been long before, I mean, right after the outbreak of the Arab uprisings. But although it's a late step for migration cooperation, it could still have a considerable meaning for the future policy response. Because the EU and Turkey are located in the same region, common region, and so cooperation is inevitable, and common challenges make cooperation inevitable actually. However, the approach or content of the cooperation, I mean the approach of the European Union, current approach, is under question, because it's questionable if the cooperation is on the right track. Just control-oriented approach will help to stop people. No, actually, it's doubtful, because unilateral approach, just control-oriented or security-driven approach will not help or stop people to flee into Europe, because they are running away from the war. And yeah, the only criteria actually the EU look for Turkey just to number of decrease, I mean decrease of number of arrivals from Turkey to Europe, and increase in readmission or return. This cannot be functional in long term.
That's right. How far would these kinds of dialogues between Turkey and the EU countries would be able to bring the two sides together? Is it going to be just a short-term deal, and in the long term, Turkey still be forgotten, quote unquote, when it comes to their membership?
Yeah, no, this is a very interesting time, of course, for Turkey's relations with the EU. They have been deteriorating over the past 10 years, and I would argue that the EU missed a lot of opportunities to have a more strategic engagement with Turkey and to discuss Turkey not just in the context of its possible joining the European Union in the future, but also in terms of Turkey as a partner, partnering with the European Union in an area and a region, a part of the world which is crucial for both Turkey and the European Union. Where we are today, there's no strategy here. This is just short-term, quite hard-nosed negotiations, really, in which Europe is offering whatever chips it thinks it has to Turkey, and Turkey will choose whether to pick up on them, will ask for a price for this, will present a price for all this. So we're really in the realm of sort of hard-nosed bargaining without any idea of broader strategic partnership. The other thing I'd like to mention is the fact that Turkey's internal situation is very precarious. Many in Europe feel that Europeans are selling out to Turkey, but of course Europe does have some assets to play, precisely because Turkey is precarious. We saw over the weekend what happened to Zaman, the newspaper, and how the government, the authorities are cracking down on freedom of the press, but at the same time southeast Turkey is on the brink of a civil war, and there are huge issues to be discussed. So Turkey needs Europe as much as Europe needs Turkey. So it's a great shame that the two sides do not take this opportunity to start discussing things in greater depth.
Wow.
The accession prospects, of course, the opening of negotiating chapters was part of the deal that has been reached so far with Turkey. We'll see what happens today at the summit. But without that deeper engagement and that deeper talk, it's really hard to see how the accession negotiations can make progress.
This is pretty much a crisis of its own making, some say, among the European countries. You see the debates going on between Greece and Macedonia, Greece seeking other countries to help with the crisis because Macedonia refused to take in some of the economic migrants coming from Greece. So all of these. Can EU come together to handle this? What can be the most effective part of the system to deal with at this moment?
Yes, I mean, the whole issue should have been framed differently from the beginning. This is a humanitarian crisis and needs to be addressed through humanitarian tools, which do mean relocation, mean solidarity, and means that all the EU member states play their part. This has not happened, and since then, EU member states, the governments are moving from a difficult situation to a situation which they themselves are making even more difficult, precisely because they are not responding with the appropriate appropriate tools. So today we are seeing this focus on Turkey, this exaggerated focus on Turkey. Turkey cannot solve the problems that Europe has in dealing with this influx of people, and we're not seeing the proper debates being put on the table, and that is devising a common asylum system, that is finding mechanisms for solidarity so countries either take people in or they pay for other countries to take people in. This issue, this problem, this phenomenon of people moving is not going to end tomorrow. We have a ceasefire in Syria, but we need to see how far it's going to hold. And even if it were to hold, it's going to take probably a decade to get Syria back on its feet.
Right.
And of course, a decade of Western intervention, money. So we need to mobilize the resources, the appropriate resources for this.
That's really the long term you are talking about. But what about the current crisis? Ms. Elmas, has Turkey realized the agreement that Turkey has entered, even though Turkey could also earn some chips, as being mentioned by Ms. Balfour from the European Union? The promise you made, it's a big one, because if the European countries, or some of them, decided to further close their borders or collapse from the negotiation on seeking a solution to these economic migrants, Turkey could be the country that ended up that have to absorb all of these people eventually. Ms. Elmas, when that decision is being made, is there a appropriate decision-making process in Turkey and Ankara for this?
Actually, Turkey cannot just stop itself the flow, or the other things, or just returning all the migrants to Turkey will not help, actually, will not be functional, as I said before. And also just the economic aid, $3 billion euros, which will will be given to Turkey, cannot solve anything on its own, because Turkey has already spent lots of money, like $8 billion to tackling the refugee crisis, and this is important, as Balfour said, to handle the issue in a multilateral and comprehensive way. Actually, the right balance between human security and state security is important here. So this needs to be a comprehensive package. Just putting all the burden on the shoulders of Turkey will not be functional. Turkey, of course, will do everything as much as it can. It did before, actually. During the Iraqi war, Turkey hosted lots of refugees and migrants in Turkey. And after 1898, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, there were lots of people fleeing to Turkey from the Balkans. So Turkey helped again these people. But this is not the way it should be, actually. So Turkey needs help, but the real mutual interest has to be on the table. So,
Gunter Seufert in Berlin, he is a senior fellow at the German Institute of International and Security Affairs. Sir, welcome to our program, even though we only have a few minutes left, but I want to hear your voice. First of all, very interesting question about Turkey and the EU. German Chancellor Angela Merkel welcomed the Turkish gesture, but said still Turkey should not become part of the EU no matter what. Your response to that? And secondly, what do you make of the crisis opportunity vis-a-vis opportunity we talked about earlier? Will Europe, from your perspective, be able to turn a crisis into opportunity? What does it take? Two questions. Probably we're going to wrap up after that.
Now, let me start with the question about the Turkish-EU relationship. I think Turkey at the time plays a very hard ball with Europe, and Europe is not able really to respond because it lacks unity. When you look at what Europe proposed, or what Euro promised to Turkey, at least what is in this discussion, namely to spend 3 billion euros, but later on to work for the visa-free travel opportunity for Turks, or to go on with Turkey's EU membership process, neither of these questions there is unity in Europe, and I think this is one of the reasons why Turkey is able really to play with the European Union. When you look what Turkey is doing, it is promising a lot, for example, Mr. Davutoglu, but at the same time nothing really has changed. Still a lot of migrants are crossing the Aegean Sea. There is no drop in the numbers. Still there is no coordination with NATO, and still there is only very few numbers of people having been accepted in the framework of readmission. And therefore I think what Europe is lacking is really a consistent policy, and a policy which gives some conditionality to Turkey. So it means, for example, that Europe is really pledging to accept resettlement of migrants if the number is really dropping. But as long as Europe is not able to speak with one voice in these matters to Turkey, I see that Europe is a kind of ball in the playing field of Turkey.
I see. What about the EU itself, or what about European countries themselves? Is there any slightest opportunity, as you see it, Mr. Seufert, from crisis into even a minor opportunity?
I'm very skeptical about this. I'm very skeptical about this because we have not a shared perception of the problem, or not a shared threat perception. Whereas for many countries, the refugee crisis is very prominent. Others don't think at that time, at the given time, that they are really affected. The only hope I have is also a negative one, that Europe might be able to unite only in rejecting the refugees. That means the most little common denominator, namely to close the land borders as we see it now in the border between Greece and Macedonia. This will continue in my view, because this is the only action Europe is really able to unite on.